Over at Marvel Comics, the anti-mutant group known as Orchis have begun their multi-pronged assault over against Marvel's X-Men in anticipation of the upcoming Fall of X storyline. In recent issues of X-Men, we saw Orchis collaborate with some of the X-Men's recent supervillains, including clones of Nathaniel Essex, as well as sabotage the X-Men's medicine. And in addition to all that, they've even been causing some public relations nightmares for the X-Men. My name is Arico Braddock, and today, let's go ahead and dive into X-Men 23 to see how Orchis continues to conspire against Marvel's mutants. But before we dive deeper into the video, I want to go ahead and give you some context over behind X-Men 23 with Marvel's solicitation text for the issue. The Sentinels get an upgrade. Anti-mutant fascist Feilong has taken control of Tony Stark's businesses and devoted Iron Man's technology toward the next generation of Sentinels. These Stark Sentinels are as hard to beat as old Shelthead himself and are fully devoted to crushing the X-Men. I want to go ahead and read off our creative team on X-Men 23. This one is written by Gerry Duggan, featuring artwork from Joshua Cassara, colors from Dee Cunniffe, letters from VC's Clayton, Cowles, design from Tom Muller and Jay Bowen. Plus, we have a cover on X-Men 23 coming over from Joshua Cassara and Marte Gracia. Here's a look over at Cassara and Gracia's excellent cover. Really love how this kind of shows off the danger that the Stark Sentinel brings over to the kind of X-Men title. I want to extend a quick thank you to Adventures in Poor Taste for posting these preview pages so fast. And I want to go ahead and talk a little bit about some of the artwork over in this issue from Joshua Cassara here. I think Joshua Cassara is able to kind of go in a couple of different directions in this title, as this issue starts with an absolutely wonderful scene between a couple clones of Nathaniel Essex. But a little bit later on in the issue, we also get this sequence as well, featuring the X-Men waging a battle over against the Stark Sentinel. I really do enjoy kind of some of the page compositions that Cassara is able to capture over on the page, as we have one kind of panel that's a little bit larger with this page we have up on the screen, teasing the massive fist over on the Stark Sentinel, really kind of giving this page a sense of irony and irreverence that plays so well into Gerry Duggan's script that is just so dark, but always manages to find the humor in some of these really tense scenarios and situations as well. This page is such a great example of how subtle this issue is, because these Stark Sentinels are bad. They are not good. But due to the fact that the Sentinel is just kind of like waving out at the bystanders, it makes him, it makes the Stark Sentinel look like an altruistic piece of technology that's meant for good. And I think that's just a clear way that Gerry Duggan and Joshua Cassara are kind of both capturing the humor and irreverence in the moment to capture a wonderful story beat. In fact, they're even emphasizing the sense of irony here with a look at this phone over in the background, capturing the image as well. So not all as it appears, unless you're kind of looking to dig beneath the surface of what's going on in this X-Men series, or just flip to the next page where the Stark Sentinel wages an assault against a just regular civilian over on the title as well. But just the way that Cassara is able to capture the Sentinel looking evil in some pages and looking kind of, stoic and, incredibly nice in others is just a really fascinating way to kind of compare and contrast some of the artwork coming in from him. I want to go ahead and focus in a little bit on Gerry Duggan's script and talk about this intro sequence over on X-Men 23. It was absolutely fascinating reading about Dr. Stasis and his sort of like fantasy scenario that he was exploring over in this first chapter. Of course, when Mother Righteous comes into the fold here, she definitely, starts kind of playing some of the mind games that she always does across these issues of X-Men. It's so fascinating to see the way that she kind of manipulates her situation with Dr. Stasis and immediately tries, almost everything she can to make sure that the situation goes in her scenario. This is some of the fallout happening directly from Sins of Sinister. And I think that Marvel has done just a great job across the board, strengthening some of these plot threads and making it feel like Sins of Sinister has some real consequences that are even going to spill over into the FallofX issue. Even though this was such an intensely dark scene, I think both Gerry Duggan and Joshua Cassara managed to find the humor in so many moments of this story. Honestly, I've been really taken with Gerry Duggan's X-Men run, especially these past couple issues with how funny and irreverent they've been. But I think the script in this issue, as well as some of the artwork from Cassara, is the absolute best I've seen from this title. That sense of irony is like used as a weapon to make this book feel even more powerful and even more fascinating here. The tense conversation between Mother Righteous and Dr. Stasis is both funny and dark at the same time, as well as so many other aspects of this book. But I just want to say overall, in terms of the full creative team, I think they've pulled out their absolute kind of best work. And this is one of the best chapters of Dugan and Cassara's X-Men that I've read to date over from the publisher. I think one also really fun moment of this issue is just how intense the battle gets between some of the X-Men and the Stark Sentinel. One thing that I've been noticing with Gerry Duggan's run, kind of the more I review it up on the channel, is how much he sort of plays into a very distinctive cast of X-Men, including people like Magic and Forge. I think the cast that he uses in particular is just a little bit interesting and like outside of the beaten path of some of those other X-Men characters as well, and really liking how some of those kind of narrative beats between these characters are still intact. Also, really enjoy the fact that both Sync and Talon are featured prominently in the issue, and that Dugan continues to place such a big emphasis over on those characters. Lastly here, this issue has an absolutely monumental post-credit scene that is actually going to affect some other books in the Marvel Universe. It makes one very, very important status quo much more clear and actually goes on to inform some recent developments over in the Spider-Man series. If you are really fascinated in seeing kind of where the Marvel Universe is going to pick up over on this last issue of Spider-Man, I highly suggest checking out this chapter of X-Men. I just think there's so much subtlety, nuance, and intrigue stretched across kind of these multiple phases in the issue. The issue feels incredibly distinct, whether it's in sort of the opening sequence with the Sinisters, the battle with the Stark Sentinel, the kind of machinations happening later with the Sinisters, as well as the fascinating post-credit sequence. Just make sure to not miss a second of this post-credit sequence that finally kind of fills in some of the lines that I think fans are really asking for over on this title. So overall here, I am incredibly happy with this issue of X-Men. I think FallofX is now more clear than ever and has been sort of materializing slowly across all of the X-Men books. It's been so interesting to watch all of these plot threads kind of coalesce in advance of the Hellfire Gala just on the horizon. I want to know from you, what did you think about my favorite issue of X-Men to date, chapter 23 of this series? Were you as taken by some of the really bleak humor as I was? Let me know down in the comments below. Thank you so much for coming to check out our review of X-Men 23. We'll be back for FallofX, the Hellfire Gala, and everything X-Men related in the near future. Thank you so much, and I'll see you soon.